In the heart of the nation's capital, Reagan National Airport stands as a symbol of American progress and connectivity. For decades, it has been a gateway to Washington, D.C., welcoming millions of travelers from across the country and around the world. But beneath the surface of this bustling hub, cracks were forming. Cracks that would eventually lead to one of the most devastating aviation disasters in recent memory. What happens when warnings are ignored and the pressure to keep up with demand outweighs the need for safety? This is the story of a tragedy that exposed the vulnerabilities in America's busiest airport and the lives forever changed by a single moment in the sky. It's a story not just about a single catastrophic event, but about the hidden dangers that can lurk in even the most familiar places, and the consequences when those dangers are left unaddressed. For years, I took comfort in the idea that our skies were always safe, that the people in charge had everything under control. I trusted the system, believing that the layers of checks and balances would always protect us. But the events at Reagan National shattered that illusion. I think I messed up by believing that accidents like this couldn't happen here in the heart of Washington, D.C. It's easy to forget that every flight is a complex ballet of coordination, technology, and human judgment, and that even the smallest misstep can have devastating consequences. Let's talk about the Reagan National collision. Reagan National Airport has been bursting at the seams for years, struggling to keep up with the relentless surge of travelers and flights. Every day, thousands of people pass through its gates, each with their own destination, their own story. The airport is a crossroads of ambition, hope, and routine, a place where lives intersect for a brief moment before scattering again. But behind the scenes, the airport's infrastructure was stretched to its limits, and the people responsible for keeping the skies safe were under more pressure than ever before. The stress was palpable, and the cracks in the system were beginning to show. Designed to handle just 15 million travelers a year, Reagan National was forced to accommodate over 25 million in 2024. That's a staggering 10 million more people than the airport was ever meant to serve. The terminals were packed, security lines snaked through the building, and every available gate was in constant use. The airport was operating at a breaking point, and everyone, from passengers to pilots to air traffic controllers, could feel the strain. The sense of urgency was everywhere, as staff worked overtime and travelers grew increasingly frustrated with delays and congestion. The airport, once a symbol of efficiency, had become a pressure cooker, with every new flight adding to the mounting tension. With more planes, more helicopters, and a crowded, chaotic sky above the Potomac, the margin for error was razor thin. The airspace around Reagan National became a tangled web of flight paths, with commercial jets, private planes, and military helicopters all vying for space. The control tower was a hive of activity as controllers worked frantically to keep everything moving safely. Every decision had to be made in seconds, and the consequences of a single mistake could be catastrophic. The complexity of managing so many different types of aircraft, each with its own requirements and flight plans, pushed the system to its absolute limits. On January 29, 2025, the pressure finally reached a breaking point. That evening, an American Airlines regional jet was on final approach to Reagan National, its passengers unaware of the danger lurking just beyond their windows. At the same time, a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter was flying nearby, its crew focused on their mission, trusting that the system would keep them safe. Both aircraft were following their assigned paths, relying on the intricate choreography of air traffic control to keep them separated. But in the chaos of that night, a series of small errors and miscommunications set the stage for disaster. In a matter of seconds, everything went wrong. The two aircraft collided in mid-air, sending both plunging into the icy waters of the Potomac River. The impact was catastrophic. There were no survivors. 67 lives were lost in an instant, families shattered, and a nation left searching for answers. The shockwaves from the crash rippled far beyond the airport, touching communities across the country and raising urgent questions about the safety of our skies. The aftermath was heartbreaking. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, braving freezing temperatures and treacherous conditions in a desperate attempt to find survivors. But the damage was done. The wreckage of the jet and the helicopter lay scattered across the river, a grim reminder of the price paid when safety is compromised. The images of twisted metal and shattered lives dominated the news, and the nation mourned as the scale of the tragedy became clear. For the families of the victims, the pain was immediate and overwhelming, a loss that could never be measured or explained. How could this happen? How could two aircraft, both following their assigned paths, end up in the same place at the same time? The answer, as investigators would soon discover, was a perfect storm of systemic failures and ignored warnings. It was not a single mistake but a cascade of errors, each one compounding the last until disaster was inevitable. Investigators found that Reagan's airspace was chronically overloaded. On the night of the crash, air traffic controllers were juggling nearly 30 flights at once, double the number considered safe for the size and complexity of the airspace. The radar screens were a blur of blips, each representing a plane or helicopter that needed to be guided safely to its destination. The controllers were doing their best, but the odds were stacked against them. Fatigue, stress, and the relentless pace of operations made it nearly impossible to maintain the level of vigilance required to prevent disaster. The system was running on borrowed time, and that night, it finally ran out. The investigation revealed that the Black Hawk helicopter was flying 78 feet higher than it was supposed to, a seemingly small error that proved fatal. Even more troubling, its military flight plan wasn't fully integrated into the civilian air traffic control system. This meant that the controllers responsible for keeping the skies safe didn't have the full picture. They were missing critical information at the worst possible moment. The lack of coordination between military and civilian authorities created dangerous blind spots, and the consequences were devastating. In the chaos of a crowded sky, even the smallest oversight can have deadly results. As the National Transportation Safety Board and other agencies pored over the wreckage and the data, it became clear that this was not a freak accident. It was the inevitable result of years of warnings that went unheeded, of a system pushed beyond its limits, and of a culture that prioritized efficiency and growth over the most basic principle of aviation, safety first. The investigators uncovered a pattern of near misses, overlooked safety protocols, and a dangerous complacency that had crept into the system over time. The tragedy was not just a failure of technology or procedure, but a failure of leadership and accountability at every level. This wasn't just a one-time failure, it was the tip of a much larger problem. The cracks in the system had been visible for years, but no one had been willing to slow down and fix them. The relentless drive for growth and profit had blinded decision-makers to the risks, and the warnings of those on the front lines were too often ignored or dismissed. Since 2011, Reagan National had seen monthly close calls between planes and helicopters. Pilots and controllers had raised concerns again and again, warning that the airspace was too crowded, that the procedures were confusing, and that it was only a matter of time before disaster struck. But those warnings were often brushed aside, lost in the rush to keep flights on schedule and passengers moving. The culture of "just make it work" had become so ingrained that real solutions were always postponed, and the risks continued to grow with each passing year. After the crash, the public's grief quickly turned to outrage. People demanded answers and they demanded change. Protests erupted outside the airport, and lawmakers called for immediate reforms. The FAA and the airport authority were forced to act. Most helicopter flights were banned from the airspace around Reagan National. New technology was installed to improve communication and tracking, and a wave of new air traffic controllers was hired and trained to handle the increased workload. The reforms were sweeping, touching every aspect of airport operations, from the way flights were scheduled to the tools controllers used to monitor the skies. For the first time in years, safety was put back at the center of the conversation. These changes were necessary, but for the families of the 67 victims, they came far too late. The reforms could not bring back the lives lost or heal the wounds left behind by that terrible night. The pain of that loss lingers, a constant reminder of what can happen when warnings go unheeded and safety is sacrificed for convenience. For those who lost loved ones, the changes are a bittersweet victory, a sign that their suffering was not in vain, but also a reminder of all that was lost. For those families, the pain is still fresh. Every year they gather at the memorial by the river, placing flowers and lighting candles in memory of their loved ones. Their grief is a powerful reminder of what's at stake when safety is compromised, and of the responsibility we all share to demand better from those who manage our skies. The memorial stands not just as a tribute to those who were lost, but as a warning to future generations, a promise that their memory will not be forgotten, and that their sacrifice will inspire a safer future for all. The Reagan National collision was a wake-up call, a stark reminder that safe skies can never be taken for granted. It forced a reckoning in the aviation industry, and it changed the way we think about air travel in America's busiest cities. But the lessons learned came at a terrible cost, and the scars of that night will never fully heal. The tragedy serves as a call to action, urging us to remain vigilant, to listen to those who raise concerns, and to never allow convenience or profit to outweigh the value of a single human life. As we move forward, let us remember the lives lost, and let their memory inspire us to build a safer, more vigilant future for everyone who takes to the skies. The story of the Reagan National collision is a somber chapter in our history, but it is also a testament to the power of change, a reminder that, even in the face of tragedy, we have the ability to learn, to adapt, and to create a better, safer world for all.